Sabharya Saprajakama
Bhuje Nyavirodataha
Vijayanya Virodhata
Sangiyamana Satkirti
Sangeyamana Satkirti
Sastribi Suragayakai
Sastrivi Suragayaka
Prati Ushvesh Anubadhena
Ratri Visheshwarvardena
Hrida Shinvan Hare Katha.
Hrida Shrinvan Hare Kata
What do I recite?
Sabharya Saprajakama
Sabharya Sapraja Kaman
Vijayanya Virodhata
Pujenya Virodhata
Sangiyamana Satkrita
Sanghiyamana Satkirti
Sastrivi Suragayaka
Sastribi Suragayakai
Pratyusheshvarvardena
Pratushvesh Anuvadena
Hrida Shrinvan Hare Kata
Hrida Shinvan Hare Katha. What was Sabharyaha
Sabharya
along with his wife, Saprajaha along with his subjects, Kaman, the necessities of life, Bhubuje, he enjoyed, Anya, from others, Avirodhataha, without disturbance, Sangiyamana, being praised, Satkirti, reputation for pious activities, Sastribhi, along with their wives, Suragayakai, by celestial musicians, Prati Usheshu, at every dawn, Anubadhena, being attached, Hrida, with the heart, Shinvan, listening to Hare, of Lord Hari, Katha, the topics, translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Abhay Charana Ravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. Emperor Swayambhuva Manu enjoyed life with his wife and subjects and fulfilled his desires without being disturbed by unwanted principles contrary to the process of religion. Celestial musicians and their wives sang in chorus about the pure reputation of the emperor, and early in the morning every day he used to listen to the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a loving heart. Purport. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Human society is actually meant for realization of perfection in Krishna consciousness. There is no restriction against living with a wife and children, but life should be so conducted that one may not go against the principles of religion, economic development, regulated sense enjoyment, and ultimately liberation from material existence. The Vedic principles are designed in such a way that the conditioned souls who have come to this material existence may be guided in fulfilling their material desires and at the same time be liberated and go back to Godhead, back home. It is understood that Emperor Swayambhuva Manu enjoyed his household life by following these principles. It is stated here that early in the morning there were musicians who used to sing with musical instruments about the glories of the Lord, and the emperor with his family personally used to hear about the pastimes of the Supreme Person. This custom is still prevalent in India in some of the royal families and temples. Professional musicians sing with Shanais, and the sleeping members of the house gradually get up from their beds in a pleasing atmosphere. During bedtime, also the singers sing songs in relationship with the pastimes of the Lord with Shanai accompaniment, and the householders gradually fall asleep, remembering the glories of the Lord. In every house, in addition to the singing program, there is an arrangement for Bhagavatam lectures in the evening. Family members sit down, hold Hare Krishna Kirtan, hear narrations from Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, and enjoy music before going to bed. The atmosphere created by the Sankirtan movement lives in their hearts. The atmosphere created by the Sankirtan movement lives in their hearts. and while sleeping, they also dream of the singing and glorification of the Lord. In such a way, perfection of Krishna consciousness can be attained. This practice is very old, as learned from this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. Millions of years ago, Swayambhuva Manu used to avail himself of this opportunity to live householder life in the peace and prosperity of a Krishna conscious atmosphere. As far as temples are concerned, in each and every royal palace or rich man's house, inevitably there is a nice temple, and the members of the household rise very early in the morning and go to the temple to see the Mangal Aarti ceremony. The Mangal Aarti ceremony is the first worship of the morning. In the Aarti ceremony, a light is offered in circles before the deities, as are a conch shell and flowers and a fan. The Lord is supposed to rise early in the morning and take some light refreshment and give audience to the devotees. The devotees then go back to the house or sing the glories of the Lord in the temple. The early morning ceremony still takes place in Indian temples and palaces. Temples are meant for the assembly of the general public. Temples within palaces are especially for the royal families, but in many of these palace temples, the public is also allowed to visit. The temple of the king of Jaipur is situated within the palace, but the public is allowed to assemble. If one goes there, he will see that the temple is always crowded with at least 500 devotees. After the Mangalarti ceremony, they sit down together and sing the glories of the Lord with musical instruments and thus enjoy life. Temple worship by the royal family is also mentioned in Bhagavad Gita, where it is stated that those who fail to achieve success in the Bhakti Yoga principles within one life are given a chance to take birth in the next life in a family of rich men, or in a royal family or family of learned brahmanas or devotees. If one gets the opportunity to take birth in these families, he can achieve the facilities of a Krishna conscious atmosphere without difficulty. A child born in that Krishna atmosphere is sure to develop Krishna consciousness. The perfection which he failed to attain in his last life is offered in this life. And he can Srila Prabhupada. The purport is complete and so wonderful that I think it's no need for anything more. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunuttam Yena Tasmai Shivaya. So, before the class, I was really, right now praying that whatever I'm speaking is according to my adhikar and is actually helpful for my own spiritual development. So Srimad Bhagavatam is meant for those who are above the modes of material nature. And traditionally, Srila Prabhupada says that Bhagavatam is meant to be heard from the mouth of a Nirag Bhakta. Nirag means someone who has no attachment to this material world. Unfortunately, today, instead of hearing from very exalted Vaishnava Prabhu, I am speaking, please forgive me. I hope and pray that only by his mercy that I can speak something which is relevant and which is useful. Jai Shri Shri Radha Gopishana Lalita Kisman Guru Sadguru Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So this is a verse from Bhagavatam. Satyam dishati arthitam arthito nrinam naiva tado yat punar arthita yata swayam vidate bhajatam anichatam ichha pidana nijapada pallavam. The Supreme Personality of Godhead fulfills the material desires of a devotee who approaches him with such motives, but does not bestow benedictions upon the devotee that will cause him to demand more benedictions again. However, the Lord willingly gives the devotee shelter at his lotus feet, even though such a devotee does not aspire for it. and that shelter satisfies all his desires. That is the Supreme Personality's special mercy. So, this is a special prerogative or the special benefit of worshipping Krishna, that even though one may have material desires, one can worship Krishna and Krishna will take away those desires and will give anyone pure devotional service, only when someone is under the guidance of a pure devotee. So here, in the translation, I'm just bringing a context to this verse. So in the translation, it's mentioned that how Swayambhava Manu enjoyed life with his family and fulfill his desires without being disturbed by unwanted principles contrary to the process of religion. So this is a benefit of Bhakti Yoga. Only Bhakti Yoga has this special benefit that one can perform bhakti and fulfill whatever are one's desires in a bona fide way, without sacrificing one's advancement in Krishna consciousness. So, what does it mean to practice bhakti? What is bhakti? Bhakti is beyond religious principles. Bhakti is beyond being a good person, being a moral person. It's beyond that. And when we actually come to the core process of Bhakti Yoga, we realize that what is Bhakti? Bhakti is Shravan Kirtan. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said the primary process of Bhakti in this age of Kali is Shravan Kirtan. So, Shravan Kirtan is the way to please the Lord, beginning with Shravan Kirtan, beginning with Shravana. And that's why this famous verse we recite, Naham Vipro, Nacha Narapatir, Napi Vaishu na Shudro, Naham Varni Nacha Grahapatir Yo Vanasto, No Vanasto Yatirva Kintu Prote, Nikhila Paramananda Purnamritabde, Gopi Bharata Padakamalayur, Dasa Dasam Dasa. So, the goal of life is to become the servant of the servant of the servant of the lover of the gopis. So, bhakti means, this morning I was hearing a lecture by Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was so emphatically pointing out that bhakti is the only way to understand Krishna. He said, by Gyan you cannot understand Krishna, by karma you cannot understand Krishna. So this mode of devotional service, Bhakti Amam Abhijanati, is what will completely destroy all our doubts. And Prabhupada was saying that how by this humble, loving mood of rendering service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a grateful heart, that is the only way that all one's misconceptions will be shred to pieces. Like Srila Prabhupada is giving an example that Krishna performed many pastimes, but do we have unflinching faith that Krishna actually performed those pastimes? How will we get unflinching faith? Faith comes by experience. How do we know that Radha Gopishna Vallabh are there? How do we know that so many exalted devotees in our atmosphere? Experience. Bhakti is experience. Rajavidyam, Rajaguhyam, Pavitram idam uttamam, Pratyakshavagamam dharmyam, Susukam kartavavyam. So this Pratyakshavagamam dharmyam, this dharma, this Bhakti Yoga is practically experienced. It's not a theoretical thing, it's not knowledge, it's not gyan, it's anubhav or experience. So this Shravan Kirtan is the main way to actually attract Krishna's mercy. The best example of that is Parikshit Maharaj. What did Parikshit Maharaj do when Parikshit Maharaj only had 7 days left to live in this world? He was not concerned with any dharma, with any so-called external activities. What he was interested in only hearing the glories of the Lord. with one pointed attention. Varnashram Dharma, or being a good brahmachari, being good grihastha, sannyasi, vanaprastha, brahmana, kshatriya, all these aspects of Vedic culture, Prabhupada stressed it simply to provide a platform to practice pure devotional service. Why? Because Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that yukta hara viharasya, that one who is regulated in the activities of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. In the purport, what did Prabhupada say? When one is regulated in his activities, then when one is pure in his activities, then eventually he can be pure in mind. And one is pure in mind, then he can think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that is the mode of goodness. The mode of goodness means to act in knowledge. So when all the senses are enlivened, all the gates of the body are enlivened by transcendental knowledge, then that is called the mode of goodness, and that is uplifting and enlightening. So, and same principle also of the first verse of Nectar of Instruction. Our acharyas say that control of the senses is very important, but controlling the senses is not bhakti directly, but it is a doorway to bhakti. It's a doorway to devotional service. So, by controlling there's so many people who control their senses in this world, but not necessarily that they're devotees. So every day he used to listen to the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead with a loving heart. So, of course, the first principle is hearing. Shravanadi Shuddha Chitta Koro Egi Udoya. If we want bhakti to come in the heart, then Shravanam is the most important. Why? Vishnu Chandra Thakur says that bhakti, where is bhakti? Where will you get bhakti? So he makes an analysis. He says, well, or maybe Krishna gives bhakti. But then he said, no, Krishna is equal to everyone. Krishna is not Samoham Sarva Bhuteshu. He is equal to everyone. He doesn't make special distinction. So, say 100 people, they're all not devotees. Some get bhakti and some don't. Why? And Vishnu Thakur says, Bhakti is to Bhagavat, Bhakta Sangena Parijayati. Where is bhakti born? Bhakti is born in the association of devotees. So, the cause of bhakti, Bhakti Devi, there is no cause for bhakti. Bhakti is causeless. But if we want to ascertain a cause to bhakti, it is the well-wishing or the blessing of a devotee. So without the mercy of a devotee, we cannot get bhakti. And how do devotees give bhakti? By transcendental sound vibration through their katha. By their katha, they distribute, they paint a picture of bhakti. What is bhakti? What happens in the spiritual world? What happens? How is Krishna? What is Krishna's personality? Tadeva ramyam ruchiram navam navam tadeva shashvan manaso mahotsavam tadeva shokarnam shoshna vrinam yat uttama shloka yashona diyate. When we hear Srila Prabhupada's transcendental sound vibration coming from the spiritual platform, we can feel immediately enlivened. Immediately, we feel a change in our heart. If someone just hears Srila Prabhupada, hears the words of a pure devotee with full attention, taking to heart whatever the pure devotee is saying, then immediately, even before he applies anything, he feels so happy in his heart. So there are three types of hearing. And the most important type of hearing is that type of hearing that takes the message to the heart and one actually starts praying to Krishna praying to the devotees that please help me to apply this in my life. How will I apply? How will I get real? How will I real? When the day will come when I will realize this truth spoken in Srimad Bhagavatam. So hearing very attentively, and hearing from the same person. Hearing from the same person is also very important. Hearing from the same person, hearing attentively, serving that person. This is all part of getting spiritual enlightenment, because enlightenment is something which happens by the mercy of Krishna. And to get the mercy of Krishna, we need to serve devotees. Serving includes hearing from them attentively, and serving also includes, trying our best to surrender to the situation. So hearing, and then chanting. So chanting refers to chanting the names, the glories of the name, the form, the qualities, and the pastimes. These are all included in chanting. But in this age of Kali, the primary way of chanting, the primary chanting, the primary kirtan is Hare Krishna Mahamantra Kirtan. This is the most, of course, there are so many prayers and so many shlokas and verses, but the prime prayer for this age of Kali is, O Lord Krishna, O energy of Lord Krishna, please engage me in your devotional service. So this is the most important prayer, because without being engaged in the service of the Lord, either physically or mentally. So physical service is, of course, archanam, dasyam, or so many different angas of bhakti are there, where we actually engage ourselves physically in the service of the Lord. But some angas of bhakti are there where we engage our mind. So either we engage physically or mentally, but engagement is very important. So only when we engage ourselves in the service of the Lord, only then can we become free from the service of Maya. So see nowadays how impractical or how difficult this is, that in Prabhupada is describing that there were musicians, there were persons who were performing kirtan in the morning, in the evening. So the only way to actually make sure that our time goes in Krishna conscious activities is when we consciously, we plan, we make arrangements. Only then does it happen. Otherwise it doesn't happen. So that's why it's so important to make sure that whatever we are doing, wherever we are going, there is always transcendental sound vibration going into our ears. Because the mind is the most important aspect of devotional service. Even though the body may be engaged, but unless the mind is engaged, we cannot get the real benefit. Vishnu Chakri Thakur says that Shravanam, Mananam, and Smaranam. Sorry, I forgot the first word. But yes, Abhyas, Mananam, and Smaranam. Abhyas means you clean a room, you do something, and then Mananam means why am I doing it? And the more and more you meditate on why I am doing it, why you are doing it, then you actually are able to remember the Lord. So the goal of spiritual life is just to remember the Lord. There is no other goal of spiritual life. So the more and more we remember Krishna, the more and more we fill our mind with thoughts of Krishna, then the more and more naturally become attracted to Krishna. And the more and more we become attracted to Krishna, we become detached from Maya, from attraction to Maya. So Srimad Bhagavatam has so many wonderful stories. I mean, they're not stories, they're real happenings of how Krishna gave his mercy. So in this verse, it is being mentioned how Swayambhava Manu used to engage in the devotional service of the Lord. And in the previous verse or in upcoming verses also explain how Swayambhava Manu, although he lived for a long time, he was not affected by old age. Time did not affect him because he was absorbed in devotional service. So, so many wonderful examples are there that how devotees who are very careful in their performance of devotional service, they easily cross over all the obstacles of material situations. Like, for example, nowadays many people say, oh, I have a job, I have work, I have family. It's so difficult to become a devotee. But we see from Bhagavatam that anyone who follows these principles of devotional service very strictly, and especially, see, this is the key. The key is hearing the pastimes of the Lord with a loving heart. That is the key. If someone can hear the pastimes, they can hear Krishna Katha with a loving heart from a pure devotee, then that person can cross over all difficulties by dedicating oneself to hearing from a pure devotee. If you keep hearing from a pure devotee, if you hear systematic from a pure devotee, definitely you will be inclined to accept what the pure devotees say. So that is Varana Dasha. Shravana Dasha, then Varana Dasha. So once you accept it in your heart, like Prabhupada was saying this morning, that when you accept it with unflinching faith, then automatically you will start doing those things. And when you start carrying out the activities with pure devotee, then all obstacles are destroyed. Prabhupada says in another purport to Srimad Bhagavatam that just by hearing the instructions of a pure devotee, you can destroy so many sinful reactions. Sripad Ayyaprabhu mentioned, just by hearing Srila Prabhupada, you can do significant anartha nivritti, just by hearing. And in the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam also Prabhupada says that just by reading this Bhagavatam, the heart becomes cleansed, just by reading this Bhagavatam. So it's a very, very potent process. And even if by chance, if someone succumbs to Maya, someone engages in sense gratification and doesn't take Krishna consciousness so seriously, even if he does that, still there is so much hope as long as one is in the association with devotees. So one example, a great example of that is Chitraketu Maharaj. Chitraketu Maharaj, he was very, very opulently situated, well situated. He had so many wives, he had everything, material desires that a common person desires in this world, but he did not have a son. And somehow, by causeless mercy, Angira Muni came there. And Angira Muni did not come there to give him a son, that was not his purpose. But Chitraketu Maharaj, because he was so bewildered, I'm speaking to myself, I am more fallen, but he was so bewildered by that situation. And so instead of asking Angira Muni, he could have asked the question that, well, I'm so infatuated, I'm so confused by this desire, what should I do? But instead of asking that, he just directly asked that, please bless me that I have a son. So he asked for that benediction, and the result of that son, he went through so much difficulty. But even after going through all that difficulty, again, because he was connected to Angira Muni, because devotees, pure devotees, they are very merciful. So when Angira Muni understood, because a pure devotee knows everything, that, oh, Chitraketu is suffering like anything now. So he went back to Chitraketu. And that's also the great benediction of asking boons from a devotee, blessings from a devotee. By getting the blessings of an exalted soul, that blessings will help us to go deeper in Krishna consciousness. So just see the amazing arrangement of Angira Muni. He gave specifically, he gave the pot of nectar only to one wife. So he gave to one wife, so he knew As a result of that, all other wives became envious of that one wife. And they gave poison to the child died. And then, if you actually read the verses of in Bhagavatam, how they were lamenting so piteously, like literally it's explained, they were like beating their body and rolling on the ground in extreme agony, crying so loudly, such they're almost about to just leave their body, like that much distress, heart-wrenching distress they're going through. And taking that opportunity, Narad Muni came, Angira Muni came, gave very, very heavy instructions on detachment. And wow, Narad Muni also, Angira Muni brought Narad Muni also. See, one sadhu brings another sadhu. And Narad Muni gave such a benediction. He gave this mantra. He said, by chanting this mantra, you will see Sankarshan in 7 days. Can you imagine? What a benediction. And also, not only that, Narad Muni, in order to completely convince Chitraketu that this attachment is all useless, he, by his mystic power, he brought the child back to life and made him speak. So when he spoke that who is my mother, who is my father, then Chitraketu's attachment was completely destroyed. So this is the mercy of being connected to devotees. And so this is the sum and substance of this verse. The sum and substance is that as long as you're connected to devotees, as long as you're connected nicely to sincere devotees and engaging the process of devotional service, then it is guaranteed that all one's obstacles to devotional service in course of time will be destroyed. And what happened after that? Chitraketu chanted the mantra and he saw Sankarshan face to face, eye to eye. And he developed such a kind of devotional service that later, unfortunately, by the cause of providence, when he was cursed by Mother Parvati, he did not, even in his mind, he was not disturbed. He attained that kind of Krishna consciousness. So this is the mercy of a devotee. And that's why Prabhupada said the best way, the most powerful way to become free from Maya, to become free from material energy, is by the association of devotees. So by associating with the devotees again and again and again, with a desire to be inspired by them, with a desire to serve them, then all one's obstacles in devotional service are destroyed. And one can gain the adhikar, because bhakti is about devotional service in practice. Sadhana bhakti is simply about increasing one's adhikar. So more and more one serves devotees, one hears devotees, one is in the association of devotees in a humble mood, then one's adhikar in devotional service keeps increasing. So the goal is to gain adhikar. So just by some artificial pretension, one cannot attain anything. Just like a child needs to grow by taking food little by little. Like suddenly, if you feed a baby, sweet rice, baby will not be able to digest it because it doesn't have the digestive ability. So day by day, when we engage in this process of devotional service with a loving mood in the association of devotees, and being accountable to devotees, and gaining their goodwill, gaining their pleasure, then by the mercy of the devotees, even if our sadhana standards or standards go down, still they will pull us up. And that's also a great incentive for us to become serious in bhakti. Because the other day I was reading that everything in this material world is based on the modes of material nature. So Prabhupada was mentioning that today I make friendship with someone in the mode of goodness, and tomorrow, because of the mode of passion, I disconnect that. That same friend becomes an enemy because of the mode of passion. So, but in the case of serious sincere devotees are in the mode of goodness. So if we want to make friendship with them, if we want to maintain relationship with them and get their mercy, then we're forced to come in the mode of goodness. We're forced. So that's a great incentive for us to become serious in our devotional service, even though we may feel like getting upset, even though we may feel like slipping in our sadhana standards, even though we feel like missing the morning program. Still, because we want to maintain relationship with the devotees, because we want to gain the pleasure of the devotees, uh, we are forced to, and that is the only way to come out of becoming slack in devotional service, is by living with devotees, by living the association of devotees. It's like Prabhupada quotes this famous verse, Chhadiya Vaishnav Seva Nistar Payachi Keva. That if you want to be in the association of devotees, if you want to practice devotional service with relish, with great vigor, interest, then you have to serve the devotees, you have to worship the devotees, you have to be in the association of devotees. Only then is it possible. Otherwise, it is impossible. So here Swayambhu Manu is showing that how, if we have the association of devotees, then devotees spiritual, there are two aspects. One aspect is, of course, devotee giving katha. Another aspect is also the devotee's physical presence is also very important, because every devotee or every living entity has a subtle body which extends to like 1 meter. So when we are in the physical association of devotees who are serious, who are sincere, and they are practicing bhakti nicely, then we feel that positive, powerful influence of their own devotional service is rubbing off on us, and therefore it becomes easier for us to practice devotional service, easier to battle with the modes of material nature. That's why performing devotional service, chanting Hare Krishna in the association of devotees is so much easier, because the effect of this subtle body of all the devotees in the temple or in an association is very, very powerful. Very, very powerful. I would just like to speak something in conclusion about Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj. Yesterday was his disappearance day, and he's a very, very important acharya in our sampradaya. And in connection with this principle of fulfilling our desires and at the same time performing Krishna consciousness, like I would just like to read one verse, 1-2 verses in Chaitanya Charitamrita, and then speak something in connection with Gaur Kishore Babaji Maharaj, in connection with this concept. This is from Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna kahe ama bhaje magai vishay sukh, amrita chadi visha magi e bada mukh. Ami vigya e murkhe vishaya kene diva, swacharanamrita diya vishaya bulai. Krishna says, if one engages in my transcendental loving service, but at the same time wants the opulence of material enjoyment, he is very, very foolish. Indeed, he is just like a person who gives up ambrosia to drink poison. Since I am very intelligent, why should I give up this fool? Why should I give this fool material prosperity? Instead, I shall induce him to take the nectar of the shelter of my lotus feet and make him forget illusory material enjoyment. So the goal is to perform bhakti in such a way that we become pure devotees. Because when we become pure, if someone becomes a pure devotee, the enjoyment, Krishna says, enjoyment that a pure devotee gets is million times more than the best contact between the senses and sense objects. And Krishna says to Uddhav in 11th canto that materialistic people, they cannot even imagine the happiness that pure devotees experience. It is far beyond their imagination. So Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj was very heavy on this point, that wherever we go in the service of Krishna should be in the service of Krishna. Should be in the service of Krishna. that we should not engage in devotional service externally, but internally allow our mind to engage in sense gratification. Like God Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj even mentioned that uh, just going to a Rath Yatra externally and participating in Rath Yatra is not enough. It's important when we go to the Rath Yatra, when we go anywhere, we should go only for the purpose of service. There should be service, because if we don't perform devotional service, then naturally the mind has opportunity for some gratification. The senses run towards objects of the senses, and as a result of that, our desire to practice bhakti is weak, becomes weakened. And then after that, when we come back and pick up the bead bag, we realize that, oh, why I'm not doing so good in my chanting? Why is my mind not interested in chanting? Why my mind is going here and there? Yes, because in the name of devotional service, we were inattentive. So that's why it's so important to be very, very careful, very careful in all our activities. Because ultimately, who has to deal with our mind? Us. Nobody is going to deal with our mind for us. So if we allow the mind to engage in objects of sense gratification, then naturally, when we practice devotional service, we'll suffer. What will be our condition? Speaking for myself, we'll neither be able to relish devotional service, nor we also know at the same time we cannot go to material enjoyment because we know it's not good for us. So we're like in a no man's land, neither here nor there. So I'm speaking for myself that so we have to be very scrutinizing, very careful in all our activities. And what does scrutinizing mean? Means the mind should be engaged. If the mind is not engaged, if the consciousness is falling down, then immediately we have to do something. We have to become aware, because ultimately devotional service means you have to pilot your own flight. You have to be careful. No one is, Prabhupada says, you have to take care of yourself. Everyone has to individually take care of themselves. Just type this on YouTube and type Vani Media Mayapur and you will get a short clip by Prabhupada. Everyone must take care of himself. Just take care of yourself. Something like this. If you search in YouTube, you will get very amazing short lecture by Srila Prabhupada, like 7 minutes. So that's why it's so important. That's why in Bhagavad Gita it's mentioned that the devotee has to be like a tortoise. What does a tortoise do? When there is unfavorable situation, then withdraws the senses and withdraws its limbs. So in the same way, a yogi or a devotee, where you see that, oh, this situation, certain things I don't need to see, then don't see it. And in that way, we communicate our seriousness and sincerity and strictness to Krishna. So then Krishna will give us opportunities, will give us association of pure devotees because we really, really want it. And the culmination is this. Everything in devotional service is based on desire or based on prayer. Prayer is very powerful, very important. But how will we be able to offer prayer? Unless our activities, our consciousness, whole life is molded in a certain way, we cannot offer prayers with intensity. And when we don't offer prayers with intensity, naturally there is not much reciprocation. Just like the difference between a soft and a loud voice. So in a soft voice, nobody hears it. So Krishna hears our heart. Krishna does not hear our voice. So if we want to really chant with our heart, we really want to love Krishna with our heart, then all our activities should be aligned in the same way. And that is the qualification to get Krishna's non-duplicitous mercy. Nishkapata kripa, mercy without cheating. So if you want that kind of mercy, then yeah, we have to be very, very careful about this aspect. And if we do it, like a grasta or anyone, like a brahmachari, anyone, if they follow these principles of devotional service, that if they fulfill their desires only in accordance with what Prabhupada says, with what authorities say, with what senior devotees say, they're very careful, then the benefit is Krishna will fulfill their desires in such a way that they will not ask for such desires again. And also Krishna will give them transcendental knowledge. So this is also a responsibility to gain transcendental knowledge, because Krishna says, one who comes to me in knowledge, tattva, that person is dearmost to me. Janma karmam chamividam evam yo veti tattvataha. So the key thing here is tattvata, in truth. So that means we have to understand Krishna from Shastra. Shastra. So Shastra is very, very important. By studying Shastra very, very scrutinizingly, it saves us a lot of trouble. Saves us a lot of trouble. And these small details given in Shastra, they are the secrets for us to get spiritual realizations. Because in Shastra it is mentioned again and again and again. Like many times we hear one lecture, but do we hear the lecture again and again? No, we don't hear it. How many times do we think about you're not the body? We don't think. But when you're reading, you're forced to think about it. When every purport Prabhupada is hammering, even if you want to escape, you cannot escape. Prabhupada will not let you escape. So that's the benefit of reading Prabhupada books. It's a very, very powerful, and not just read, but to study Prabhupada books. Studying Prabhupada books and studying the Acharya's songs is the secret to performing pure devotional service. Both these are very, very powerful. That's why Gaudshadeva Maharaj said that Krishna, if you want Krishna prem, he used to say, just buy 2 books. Which 2 books? Prarthana and Prem Bhakti Chandrika. If you just buy and read these 2 books, just read, you will become a pure devotee, or achieve Krishna prem. So these 2 things is Prabhupada books, Acharya's, previous Acharya's books, and Acharya's, Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharya songs. These 2, very powerful. I would like to end here. Does anyone have any question or comment?
You mentioned that prayer is very powerful. First, thank you for your advice for me. You mentioned that prayer is very powerful, and I'm curious what prayer is, because my experience in Western religions is that it can be a very materialistic ritual. You know, thou Father art in heaven, give us our daily bread. So I'm wondering what real prayer is. Not what prayer is.
Tadvidi pranipadena pariprashnena sevaya upadakshati jnanam jnanistha darshana. So this verse says that first you surrender to a guru, then you render service to him with faith. You hear from him with faith, then you ask question. So prayer means you're actually asking question or asking help from Krishna. So if we surrender, try our best to surrender to Krishna through his devotees, hear very nicely from his devotees, and in this way we cultivate our devotional service. Then we utter the prayers of the previous acharyas, then we'll be able to connect with those desires. So basically, prayer means you're asking for something from Krishna, of course, your devotional thing. So unless you have a desire for that in your heart, the prayer is actually communicating desire to Krishna. So the more intense that desire is, the more powerful that prayer is. So Om Ajnana Timirandasya, to the extent that you're convinced that you are actually in Ajnana, you're actually in ignorance, to that extent that prayer has value. To the extent that you're convinced I'm convinced I'm in Ajnan, and to the extent that I'm convinced that Guru can do it, Guru will do it, to that extent that prayer is powerful. So faith is the most important thing in prayer. I mean, our own consciousness and faith is very important. So Prabhupada said, pure devotee is unflinching faith. Unflinching faith means he has experience, basically. So that's all it means. He has no doubt that this deity is Krishna. There's no doubt, because he never sees a deity as a deity, he sees Krishna. He never sees Bhagavatam as a book, he sees Krishna Tulya Bhagavata Vibhu Sarvashraya. He never sees a devotee as a material person, because he always sees the transcendental aspects of the devotee. He never sees the temple of the Lord as just a place. He sees the temple of the Lord as a Dham, because he feels the spiritual energy in the temple. So faith is very important. And of course, our activity is very important. So then when we deeply connect with that desire, then we can pray. So that's why Acharyas have written songs, in very methodical way. Bhaktivinoda Thakur, first prayers on humility, prayers on avoiding things that are not favorable for bhakti, prayer for things which are favorable. Lord is my only protector, my only maintainer. What is full surrender? So that we can, as we advance, our heart should connect with those prayers. And when our heart connects with a particular prayer, we offer that prayer is very powerful. Like someday you feel very inspired. I really want to taste the pure name. So then you pull up prayers of the pure name by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Kabe Habe Bolo Sedi Namar. You recite those prayers with your heart. So the key word in this whole purport, in this whole verse is the heart. So wherever the heart goes, attention flows, affection flows, and reciprocation comes there. Anyone else has any question or comment on?
In the first part of the lecture, you were saying about the connection and then the love for Krishna, the more we have, then the other things will go down. Right? So, especially talking to myself, putting a pillar and there to those are externals, but at the same time, in the heart, the deep connection, right? That is empty. And to put that, basically, what I'm saying is to invest. We need to have something in that. So otherwise, every small things, we try to take out, it becomes difficult. How we can, invest in that Shravanam and Kirtanam, and how much we, balance, check that. We are giving one day one lecture, reading at least 15 minutes. But that is that's the only thing, right? So after that again, and completely doing material activities. So how we can actually check that? It's not enough for sure.
Yeah.
I was talking to myself. Because of that, what happens is mind keeps giving other reasons and finds it comfort zone.
Yeah, two ways are there. One way is memorize prayers. If you memorize prayers, you can chant prayers even when you are not. And prayers are very powerful, very, very powerful. Previous Acharya's prayers, very powerful. Even if you're not conscious of it, it gives so much mercy. I mean, I tell my personal experience. Sometimes when I'm serving the deities, my conscience is not good. Or I can feel like, I'm not really absorbed that much. So then when I chant prayer, it makes difference, and see it makes difference. And the second thing is, you can make some arrangement, like, have a really nice system. Like nowadays, there is very, like, I think Black Friday is coming or went, or I don't know. But have very nice sound devices, and here, powerful, pure devotee sound vibration, and just keep it playing. So at least it's audible wherever you're going, whatever you're doing. Like, I know others maybe children may find it little discomforting initially, but eventually they'll get used to it. So, yeah, like Prabhupada said, even if you don't understand, it's beautiful. So, yeah, this is the only grace field. And if there is no Shravanam Kirtanam, even if you're doing service, the mind will take you away, and our Prabhupada speaks about it. So many acharyas speak about it, that without Shravanam Kirtanam, the mind is very difficult to engage, because after Shravanam Kirtanam, then comes Smaran. So, like sometimes even in front of the deity. But you see, what is the difference between being in front of the deity with Kirtan, without Kirtan? A huge difference. why Shravanam Kirtanam. For Smaranam, Shravanam, Kirtanam is essential. So we cannot remember Krishna without Shravanam Kirtanam. And ourselves doing Kirtanam, we may not be able to do, but Shravanam we can definitely do. And yeah, just Shravanam is the only way. It's the easiest way, is the only way in this age of Kali to actually purify our heart. And yes, Prabhupada also says we must chant constantly. So the extent that we can chant, we must chant. But yeah, Shravanam is essential. Okay, it's already 9:27. We will end here. Please forgive me for anything inappropriate I spoke. If there's anything useful, is all the realizations of the pure devotees, previous acharyas, and if I spoke anything wrong, then it's my own defects coming out. Jai Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vancha kalpataru Krishna Kripa sindhu bheva cha. Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavim. Ananta koti Vaishnavim ki jai. Srila Prabhupada.
Jai.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Vandana.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you for the class. Tanvat Pranam.